Shadows of the Stage by William Winter. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chapter 26. Mrs. G. H. Gilbert. Students of the English stage find in books on that subject abundant information about the tragedy queens of the early drama, and much likewise, though naturally somewhat less, because comedy is more difficult to discuss than tragedy, about the comedy queens. Mrs. Cibber still discomforts the melting Mrs. Porter by a tenderness even greater than the best of Belvedere's could dispense. Mrs. Bracegirdle and Mrs. Oldfield still stand confronted on the historic page, and still their battle continues year after year. All readers know the sleepy voice and horrid sigh of Mrs. Pritchard in Lady Macbeth's awful scene of haunted somnambulism, the unexampled and unexcelled grandeur of Mrs. Yates in Medea, the infinite pathos of Mrs. Dancer, she that became, in succession, Mrs. Spranger Berry and Mrs. Crawford, and her memorable scream as Lady Randolph at Was He Alive? The comparative discomfiture of both those ladies by Mrs. Siddons, with her wonderful wailing cry as Isabella, "Oh, my Byron," her overwhelming Lady Macbeth, and her imperial Queen Catherine. The brilliant story of Peg Woffington, and the sad fate of Mrs. Robinson. The triumphant career of Mrs. Abington, and the melancholy collapse of Mrs. Jordan. All those things and many more are duly set down in the chronicles. But the books are comparatively silent about the old women of the stage, an artistic line no less delightful than useful, of which Mrs. G. H. Gilbert is a sterling and brilliant representative. Mrs. Jefferson, the great-grandmother of the comedian Joseph Jefferson, who died of laughter on the stage 1766 to 1768, might fitly be mentioned as the dramatic ancestor of such actresses as Mrs. Gilbert. She was a woman of great loveliness of character, and of great talent for the portrayal of old women, and likewise of certain old men in comedy. She had, says Tate Wilkinson, one of the best dispositions that ever harbored in a human breast, and he adds that she was one of the most elegant women ever beheld. Mrs. Gilbert had always suggested that image of grace, goodness, and piquant ability. Mrs. Vernon was the best in this line until Mrs. Gilbert came, and the period which has seen Mrs. Judah, Mrs. Vincent, Mrs. German, Mary Carr, Mrs. Chippendale, Mrs. Sterling, Mrs. Billington, Mrs. Drew, Mrs. Phillips, and Madame Ponisi, has seen no superior to Mrs. Gilbert in her special walk. She was in youth a beautiful dancer, and all her motions have spontaneous ease and grace. She can assume the fine lady without for an instant suggesting the parvenue. She is equally good, whether as the formal and severe matron of starched domestic life, or the genial dame of the pantry. She could play Temperance in The Country Squire, and equally she could play Mrs. Jellyby. All varieties of the eccentricity of elderly women, whether serious or comic, are easily within her grasp. Betsy Trotwood, embodied by her, becomes a living reality, while on the other hand she suffused with a sinister horror her stealthy, gliding, uncanny personation of the dumb, half-insane Hester Dethridge. That was the first great success that Mrs. Gilbert gained under Augustin Daly's management. She has been associated with Daly's company since his opening night as a manager, August 16, 1869, when at the Fifth Avenue Theatre, then in 24th Street, she took part in Robertson's comedy of Play. The first time I ever saw her she was acting the Marquise de St. Maur in Caste, on the night of its first production in America, August 5, 1867, at the Broadway Theatre, the house near the southwest corner of Broadway and Broome Street, that had been Wallack's, but now was managed by Barney Williams. The assumption of that character, perfect in every particular, was instinct with pure aristocracy. but while brilliant with serious ability, it gave not the least hint of those rich resources of humour that since have diffused so much innocent pleasure. Most of her successes have been gained as the formidable lady who typifies in comedy the domestic proprieties and the nemesis of respectability. It was her refined and severely correct demeanour that gave soul and wings to the wild fun of A Night Off. From Miss Garth to Mrs. Laburnum is a far stretch of imitative talent for the interpretation of the woman nature that everybody, from Shakespeare down, has found it so difficult to treat. This actress has never failed to impress the spectator by her clear-cut, brilliant identification with every type of character that she has assumed, and back of this she has denoted a kind heart and a sweet and gentle yet never insipid temperament, the condition of goodness, sympathy, graciousness, and cheer that is the flower of a fine nature and a good life. Scenes in which Mrs. Gilbert and Charles Fisher or James Lewis have participated, as old married people, on Daly's stage, will long be remembered for their intrinsic beauty, suggestive of the touching lines, "And when with envy time transported shall think to rob us of our joys, you'll in your girls again be courted, and I'll go wooing with my boys." End of Chapter 26. Mrs. G. H. Gilbert. Shadows of the Stage by William Winter.